Approval, pad 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 approval.
Project area budget for the proposed Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project area.
We sent out in the packets a lot of materials, 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 a lot of materials. We have Zion Public Finance, Susie Becker from Zion Public Finance. They did an independent audit of the financials. We also have Adam Long from Smith Hardison on the line. He helped draft the documents and the agreements. And then we have the Auto Mall representatives here, Jared Wheeler, Greg Whitehead, and then we also have a representative from Zitla, Greg MacArthur is here as well. I'll start with a brief overview. So the last meeting that we had was September 22nd for our RDA.
Steve, are you able to show the screen?
Yeah, I'll bring it up now. It's coming back up.
He was logged onto my computer. I'm still transitioning from a PC to a Mac, so he's helping me. There we go. Whoops. Not what I wanted to do. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I like to do this every time we meet. I like to just kind of keep beating this drum. So again, this is just a reminder that we of the economic development strategy, just the kind of the quick economic development strategy, which is to increase the, expand and strengthen the city's sales tax base, property tax base, and buying power through well-paying jobs. We'll go over each of those and how they pertain to this project. Again, this is kind of the reasoning behind it, the really high-level reasoning, which is we are predominantly a bedroom community and with a desire to move towards commercial development within the city of Washington. And we're doing a lot of things to help support that. And this is one of them. Excuse me. Another one is that this is a coordinated effort. Each city, if you or each entity rather, does their part. We'll be focusing on this city. If you look at the city level, that's what's outlined in red. What we'll be focusing on is what's outlined in the blue boxes, which is local sales tax incentive and geographic location. And that's geographic location as it pertains to a redevelopment area, and also as it pertains to a economic center. So that's just review. I did want to note that Jeremy, I think, sent out, city manager Jeremy sent out in his weekly email that we have updated the city's economic development website. So it does have the PID application. We'll be adding to that as we move along through this. We also, in collaboration with our partners at the state at EDC Utah, put together this retail sales profile that helps give information out to projects that may be interested in coming to the southern Utah area, and it gives specific demographic information and other information that helps businesses make decisions about where a good location is. And that's just a starting point. And they're always welcome to call me and have a conversation about that, so I can give them more local boots on the ground data for that. So that's the website. It's just going to washingtoncity.org, click on development, and then click on economic development. As part of this strategy, and a part of the retail guide actually notes this, that we're looking at commercial development. And you'll note two things. We chose the cover of the brochure to reflect what drives retail, and that's rooftops. And as you know, Exit 13, we have quite a few rooftops going in over the past few years. And that's going to help to stimulate development, but it's still a risk for projects that are first in, somewhat of a risk. It's less risky as the area builds out. So we are focusing on this, and there is a lot of interest. And of course, all of this land is owned by SITLA, and we work locally with them. We work with the state. We have a lot of different partners that can help with this. But specifically, we're looking at developing at Exit 13. This would be on the south side of I-15, and this is the location approximately where it looks from an overview of the proposed Siena Hills Auto Mall. We've talked about some of the tools that we use. We've already gone through a public infrastructure district. We do have a policy in place for that. And now today we're going to focus on community reinvestment areas. So we're going to do a quick review of community reinvestment or redevelopment agencies. This is an agency that's created by the city that was already done, and is authorized by state code. So that means we have to follow state code, and there's certain things that we have to follow, and a lot of the documentation that we sent in your packet pertains to that. So if you have any questions specifically about that, we can get into those. So the governing body, again, is this body, the City Council. Excuse me, because the Washington City is the one who initiated this CRA. So the community redevelopment area is then designated, and the purpose of the redevelopment area, or redevelopment area, I like to use in air quotes, is to promote economic development, address underdevelopment or underproductive development, which I would say that we probably hit those two first ones with this project, and then address blight. So those are the justifications under state code, excuse me, in which you can create a CRA. Within a CRA, you have the ability to use tax increment financing. We talked a lot about this, and we talked about how it pertains to this, to the CRA working with with other taxing entities. The school board is a big, or the school district is a big one, the county, mosquito abatement. There's a whole, basically anyone who's a recipient of property taxes would be who we would be doing interlocal agreements with if they were participating in the CRA. Excuse me. In this case, we're focusing on that last line, which is the city and county portion of sales tax may be utilized. So state code allows us to use city and or county portion of sales tax towards within a CRA for tax increment financing. So this is just a review again. So the governing board, if you follow kind of the pictures, it's a little easier to wrap your head around, but the governing board would have interlocal agreements with taxing entities. In this case, the governing board, which is the agency, is entering into, or it's being proposed to enter into an interlocal agreement with the city. That's why you're kind of having an agreement with yourself. And then everything, all the details for that agreement and the tax increment are contained within the agreement, within that interlocal agreement for how that works. And we did do a financial analysis, so we'll go over that. One thing that I did want to know is Washington City's desire and movement towards creating evaluation criteria for projects. As we look to stimulate more economic development, more commercial projects within the city, we are committed to establishing an evaluation criteria. And these evaluation criteria, we're going to kind of reference some of the other evaluation criteria so it'll put it into context. It's something that serves the city. So we'll be going through a process. It's a little bit of a process, and we want it to be comprehensive enough to really evaluate projects so that we have some justification for why we're incenting one and not another, or just so that we're making sure that we're measuring apples to apples when it comes in terms of economic development projects. In the meantime, I'm going to borrow from the state, or the EdTIF, which is called the Economic Development Tax Increment Financing. This is a state incentive tool. This is primarily used to incent jobs-based projects, and this is their policy. So the EdTIF is a tax credit. It's all post-performance. Some states do land up front or some incentives up front. Utah mostly does post-performance, and definitely at the state level does post-performance. It's a refundable tax credit rebate of up to 30% of new state revenues, and those state revenues are noted in this. So state sales tax revenues, so the state uses state sales tax revenues to incent projects, corporate taxes, and withholding taxes paid to the state, so the employer taxes. And it's some combination of that based on their own formula, their own evaluation criteria, and you work with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, or Economic Opportunity is what they call it. So Go Utah is the entity that we would be working with if it were that. And typically their projects span over 5 to 10 years. I've seen some that are longer. And these are available for Utah companies. And in fact, I think the award is predominantly Utah companies, and then also companies that are seeking relocations or expanding operations into Utah. So bringing those outside companies inside the area. These are the requirements that the state EdTIF, and I want to note that this project checks everywhere that you see a check mark on the next couple of slides. I want to note that in the evaluation, and I'll do a summary of the evaluation and a little bit in-depth evaluation. I think you had an opportunity to read over some of that. But everywhere you see a check mark, that's where this project meets or exceeds the state's requirement. So, well, we'll have to wait on that check mark, the top one, but they require that they be supported by local government. The high ones are significant capital investment into the area. The reason for that is because that produces higher assessments for property taxes. So that's what they're looking at, capital investment. New high-paying and also quality projects. So they create new high-paying jobs. The state has 110% as the minimum threshold for what's considered high-paying job. And for Washington County for 2021, that would be $41,219 per job. And that's for base pay and any employer paid benefits. they go towards that. And then generate new tax revenues, primarily, and that would be sales tax and property tax revenues. They also look at competitive projects. They're looking for competition, not necessarily competition within the state, but competition at outside markets outside the state. They have a few other things. They want you to have significant purchases from Utah vendors and suppliers. They know that building in Utah stimulates other jobs in Utah. There's a multiplier effect. They don't actually calculate the multiplier effect like some states do, but those are things that they do consider. And then the state EdTIF rules say that there's no retail business operations, that they will not incent those. So this particular project wouldn't be a project for state retail, and part of the justification for that is it doesn't matter where say a big box retailer, it doesn't matter where it goes in Utah, Utah's going to get a portion of that sales tax revenue. So that they don't like to incent on that. I've also spoken with the school board. They're our largest local taxing entity or recipient of property taxes. And this was a criteria given to me a few months ago. So it also follows closely with what the state, if you'll notice, it follows closely with what the state wants. So they say supported by city and county. They obviously they don't want to incent a project that the city's not in favor of or the county's not in favor of. They're also looking at capital investment, and particularly from outside the state. They want to create high-paying jobs for kids that are going to school here so that they have a place that to continue their education and into employment. And this one, so what's in parentheses is kind of the interpretation. So they say increase assessed value while minimizing impact on services required. So what that means is increase property tax revenues, because they're the largest recipient of that. And then they have a provision, no housing projects, because housing projects obviously don't minimize the need for school services. So they're trying to balance that out so that they're not giving up would-be property taxes that would just generate more expense for them. And then the last piece that they would like, this isn't a criteria, but this is a wish for them. They like partnership opportunities that are education supportive. And then they also say no retail projects are following the state with that. And again, their funding comes in regardless of where the project is located. Okay, so specifically for the Siena Hills Auto Mall, these are the projections we have. And I went ahead and although we're not asking the other taxing entities to participate, I wanted to measure the impact to the other taxing entities that this project located in Washington City would have. So this was Zion Public Finance assisted us in evaluating this and putting this together. So you'll see the total, and then you see a net present value. So that's just reduced for future revenues. And if you'll note that because the proposed site for this auto mall is currently on property owned by Sitla, it's not generating any tax revenues. They're a non-taxed entity. So that's why you see all the zeros. And then below, that's a summary of the overall project for the life of the project, which is 10 years. That's what, obviously the life of the project will extend beyond that, but the incentive being requested is 10 years. So 5.6 million is the impact over 10 years to the other taxing entities, with the majority of that going to the Washington County School District. So it's a great community support funding local schools.
Will you help me out with the NPV?
Net present value?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, and then this is just a breakdown annually along with a chart of the percentages of where those revenues go for property taxes. And again, this is unlike primary residential that receives a discount on their property taxes, and this is tax assessed at 100% of the market value. So annually, we're looking the taxing entities that are not participating at this time in this project stand to gain around $700,000 per year annually.
So hold on a sec, Rusty, sorry. Mm-hmm. So this is what keeps throwing me for a loop. So we're showing all these zeros, and that's only based on that currently we're not making any tax revenue on the property, right?
Right, if the property was privately owned,
It says percent to agency, and then it says incremental revenues 100%. So isn't that percent to agency if we do this project?
yeah, I'm sorry. The percent to agency and the base value are the same because we're not asking for participation from other taxing entities for this specific auto sales. We're not asking for that. So I'm sorry about the line. It should say base, not percent to agency, but they're the same. It's the base is 0 and the percent to agency is 0 because it's not being requested at this time. We may do an overlay, a CRA overlay later.
What's not being requested from the other, like the school district in those?
So right now, in order to stimulate the auto mall and for them to start building, they're requesting that the city provide a local incentive just based on sales tax that would go to the city, and we'll go over that. They're not asking for property tax. And we're not asking for property tax. We do have the ability later to do an overlay. So this is just the auto mall area, the 42 acres of the auto mall that we're contemplating now. It's possible to overlap CRAs, and we may do that later, but we'll have to go through a financial analysis for that. And it's possible also that the taxing entities agree to give up a portion of the increment. They like to do that when there's some base, not 0. So it's better that this project is already underway so that there's a base that's greater than 0, because it's the difference between their base and the increase. And there's the earning side of that, which would be what they would contribute to the agency. And then there's
But the agency is city, right?
Correct. Well, it didn't used to be. It used to be a representation. They used to have a technical a taxing entity committee. A TEC is what a taxing entity committee, which used to consist of all of the taxing entities would be the agency. Recent legislation changed that, or fairly recent legislation changed that, so that cities can do this and negotiate with the taxing entities. So the city basically bears the responsibility of vetting the projects and then bringing them to the taxing entities, and those agreements are worked out with interlocal agreements with each taxing entity, with the agency managing the areas and reporting to the state.
But what we're asking though is that currently right now there's no revenue.
Correct.
And then the agency is going to collect all these taxes and distribute them to these other, instead of the state.
No. So the taxes are collected by the county assessor, sets those, and they actually go to the county. So if, for example, if the school district were to participate, it would probably not be at 100%, it would probably be at 25% or some other percentage. And so the taxes that were collected from the increased property, from the creation of a business that then generates property taxes, would go to the county, and then that part would come, that whatever portion was agreed upon in the interlocal agreement would go back to the agency and go to that fund.
Can I restate just to make sure I'm on the right page? So you're basically just showing these other taxing entities for basically two purposes. One to show if at a future time you do an overlay, you can show what's in it for them. And two, to just kind of show that this is a net benefit to those, even without an overlay. Is that?
Yes. So I'm sorry for the confusion.
Well, I don't know if I'm not confused still either. So,
okay. So
and the reason why I'm not is because I admit I'm trying to, these other agencies have to agree for the CRA to work, correct?
But they're not in this one.
So they are not in this one.
They're not in this one.
This is just their straight taxes, as if we didn't do this CRA, this would be the same if we also got the project.
So
that's correct. Essentially what I'm trying to show, what I'm trying to demonstrate in this is because of Washington City's desire to attract retail, and because of the opportunity that we have in attracting this type of retail, I'm showing the impact that it has for the other taxing entities. And I'm making sure that this board is well aware of that impact, so that as we move forward, you can be advocates if we want to do an overlay, but also I think it's great that a project comes to the city that has such an impact on the larger region and the larger community.
I agree with you. I like that it's shown that this is what they're getting, but so far in the presentation, all we've shown is what they'll get if the projections are right and we get this amount of tax dollars based on the amount of sales.
Correct.
That's all we've shown. We haven't shown how the benefit to Washington City alone yet, right?
No, but we will.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and this is where we start to get into the benefit to Washington City directly, and then I have a summary that kind of summarizes all the benefits. So again, if you look at the criteria for both the EdTIF and the school board, what they would like to see as far as evaluating projects, they're also interested in sales tax. Now this chart shows what goes to the state. So auto sales are taxed at 6.85% in the state of Utah, and that varies at 6.75 generally sales tax for Washington City. So that it may be a little off, but I just use the state, and really it's just to compare. So the state gets the majority of those revenues, and the projections, the sales projections, would generate for the state of Utah about 3.6 million per month in state sales, and they get that regardless of where that auto mall locates within the state of Utah. If they decide that they have a better opportunity in a neighboring state or somewhere else, then of course we don't get any of that, right? But based on the revenues that the auto mall provided, and we've analyzed with Zion Public Finance, this is what the state would stand to benefit, and this is for comparison purposes. The city has that little squiggly because it's about, and that fluctuates. We have two parts of the state, or of our local tax. We have the local option, or the point of sale tax, which is 0.5%. And then we get another 0.5 or up to 0.5 or near 0.5 based on a formula that has to do with population and how much revenue comes into the state overall. So what Washington City has to work with, and what we can only legally negotiate with, is that 0.5 point of sale tax. So I wanted to demonstrate that the post, or the point of sale tax, that's the estimation of what would be generated for the life of the project, for monthly, yearly, and the life of the project, that would go directly to Washington City. Now, the other part of that is the 0.25, which is being proposed as a possible incentive to the auto mall. So that makes up 0.5, and then we have a possible, which is why the squiggly is there, because it's based on the formula, 0.5 additional. So we have about 1% that would go to the city, and of that 1%, we can negotiate on 0.5%, and of that 0.5%, we're proposing that the incentive be no greater than 0.25% to the auto mall.
So are these numbers projected based on it being full build out as of today? So if everything was operating, we're going to get 1.8 million in the first year.
So the monthly and the yearly is based on full build out, and the 10 years is based on is for the ramp up. So that's a cumulative of the first 10 years, and and that depends on when the build out is. The build out could be at 7 years, it could be at 10 years. So the monthly and yearly is post 10 years, and then the 10 years is a accumulation of the 10 years prior to that. So obviously, as they build out, they're not going to be at full capacity. So we discount it back, and we look at when the dealerships come online. And so all of that has been provided and analyzed, provided by the projections that the auto mall has, and then analyzed using a financial model that Zion Public Finance does across the state.
But I think maybe what you're getting at is that because it's post-performance, whatever the actual number is, then the incentive would be 0.25% of that. So
I just wanted to make sure I was clear, because we can't say we're going to get 1.8 million in the first year. It's not going to happen because they're not going to be at full build out.
correct.
If they are, that's great. But I just wanted to be clear that I'm looking at a 1.8 million benefit to the city, but it's not going to happen year one.
No, but
Right.
we also won't be paying a $1.8 million incentive year one. So
That's
Correct.
a great point. I'm sorry. sometimes I get so into this that I forget, I have a hard time coming up for the questions.
You're doing great.
The higher level questions, I get into the weeds. Okay, thank you. So the question tonight is the Siena Hills Auto Mall supported by Washington City? And then this is the summary that I promised. The capital investment to the area is about $80 million. That's what they're projecting will be in the building and facilities, would be about $80 million, which is a significant investment. Just to put it into perspective, we've had 2 recent economic development projects that were participated, that the state did evaluate and would participate in. One was $35 million, it was RS Technologies. And then another was the expansion of Lighthouse Foods in Hurricane. That was about $25 million. So $85 million is a significant investment. Also jobs, this was somewhat surprising. Retail typically doesn't have those higher end jobs, but they're expecting to produce over the life of the project about 750 jobs. And the average pay for that is about $76,000 for those jobs. So there's some higher end jobs. And that equates to about 204% of our current county average. And of course, that average will hopefully go up because we're trying to put upward pressure on that. So we're kind of hitting those property tax, which is a direct result of capital investment, jobs to put more money in the pockets of our residents and the people in the area, and then the 2 levers that the city has, which is city property taxes and city sales tax. So this is only the city's portion of property taxes is about $680,000 over 10 years. This is if the projections, and we're going, this is all projected out based on best projections. So it'll be some of it could be greater and could be less than that. Probably the property tax is more accurate because they have a better idea of what the capital infrastructure investment would be. And then sales tax, of course, is based on sales, which has a lot of factors in it. But conservatively, their projections would yield the city about $75 million over 10 years in sales tax revenue. This project would be, if they perform at half of their calculations, and I'm not trying to disparage the project in any way. I'm just all about risk mitigation. I'm very conservative and I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. You never want to do that in economic development. So I try to take a very, very conservative approach when I evaluate these, which may seem like a downer sometimes, but I promise you I'm really excited about this because it measures really well with past projects and it's a fantastic opportunity. But if they produce half of their sales projections, so say they're wildly optimistic in their projections, this will still be the #1 sales tax producing entity in the city of Washington. So it's a great opportunity for us.
Hey Rusty, can I ask a quick question? And this slide is super helpful. This is great information, and I appreciate the way that you you temper our expectations, but still help us realize that what this could bring. First quick question, is this going to be called Siena Hills Auto Mall, or is that potentially going to change? I'm seeing nods. Okay. And then the other question that I have is, so we're going to be moving forward to the project area plan and the budget. And I looked at the maps, and thank you for all the information. I just want to make sure that I understand the area, and the area defined is the Siena Hills Auto Mall, just that area, and that
correct.
Entire area is the Siena Hills Auto Mall, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. That's what I wanted to make sure of.
And I'll also note here, approval of the resolutions for this tonight does not mean that there's approval of the agency for an incentive agreement with the auto mall. We're just setting everything up in place. So this board will get to review that, and that's actually a little bit, I'll go over that. So the next steps would
Rusty,
after.
can I just
Yep.
stop you right there really fast? I don't want you to move past this. So would you talk a little bit about how the tax increment and CRA is necessary for this entity to be competitive? I would just like to see why they need it, how it benefits them, and
Sure.
and what that would look like for them. Because obviously, if we invest in this, then we want them to be successful.
Right. That's a great question. Twofold, and that's something that we should definitely scrutinize and definitely be looking at as a city. Is, are we incenting a developer? Are we what is the return on our investment if we're going to invest tax dollars of public funds into a project, what's a return to the public? What's a return on that? And is it necessary? So auto malls are a special case because they're such high tax generating entities. I want to compare Costco, obviously that's a big tax generated, I shouldn't say the name. But anyway, those big back box stores similar to Costco, high generating. The projections on this are 4 to 5 times the amount. So they have a big bang for their buck. Cities, areas, sales tax incentives began in California, and they began because of auto dealerships, because they have such an impact on those communities that they locate within. That causes some controversy too, but it's definitely a big benefit. And you can see those sales tax incentives go towards helping support that cost of our predominantly bedroom community, predominantly residential community. So they go into the city revenues, help with firefighters, police officers, maintaining the roads. All of those come from our general fund, which city sales tax is a big portion of that. Even though it's a small portion, a small portion of the overall sales tax, it's a large revenue source for the cities. Now, the Siena Hills Auto Mall, this is a competitive project. We're not necessarily competing in southern Utah. We are definitely competing with other locations that may be also a viable option for this development across Utah, but more so we're competing with developments outside of the state of Utah. This is the first project like this. It's not a typical auto mall where you would see a lot of asphalt with a lot of cars parked on it in a small little building. These are large Class A office spaces, which the city council will be able to review this when they do their conditional use. But large Class A office buildings, significant public infrastructure in the area, and beautiful development. But also those. And this could go in other areas. There's nothing like it in Utah right now.
Can I add one more potential benefit from our tax incentive? I think Washington City has had its share of projects that want to come and take a long time getting off the ground and just seem to languish a little bit. So I'm probably getting ahead of Rusty a little bit, but one of the things that this particular incentive package does, incentive agreement, it starts the clock as soon as the first dealership is in place, and it's a 10-year agreement. So the full build out, there's incentive to go quickly, to be the first in and to be the second in. And if you're 8 years in, you only get a 2-year incentive. So the other thing that we're creating is a little bit of expediency and a little bit of excitement to get in now and help the auto mall attract these dealerships.
We talked about that earlier, but I'm glad you brought that back up to remind me of that.
The past 2 projects that I did at the county level in other communities in southern Utah were 20-year projects, so that helps put it in perspective as well.
So Rusty, before you move on, just for clarification, it says city sales tax 75 million. That's the taxable. It's not the amount of money we're getting.
That's the amount we're getting, if the projections are correct.
Go back a slide. You said 18 million in the slide prior. So explain the difference to me.
Sure. So this is the breakdown. The incentive being proposed is 18.8 million, and it's not exact. It's proportional to the performance of sales. All of this is proportional to the sales performance, but the incentive is 0.25%. Then add the point of sale tax, which is 0.25%. That's a portion that would be retained. So essentially, what that's saying is that the portion directly going to the city is 0.5%. We're proposing that split between half going to this remaining with the city and half going to the auto mall.
So you're just adding up the city, the post, and the incentive is approximately 75 million. That's taxed to the city, and city retains the 37 no matter what. There's the post, the 18, and then the incentive back to them for up to 18 based on their projections. Now, can it be more if say they do phenomenal and all of a sudden
Yes.
No matter what, for those 10 years, it's 0.25.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
So then the next steps on this would be to draft an incentive agreement between, as provided everything passes tonight and everything's approved. The next, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I just wanted to let you know where we're, this is the first time we've gone through a CRA process ever in Washington, I think, that in recent memory. So I just wanted to go through, and that's why I included the property tax as well, because we would be, typically we would be having negotiations with other taxing entities with regards to property taxes. In this case, we're doing just sales tax and just the portion of sales tax that goes to the city and just a portion of that as well. So, but I wanted to go through the whole project just to give an overview in anticipation of future CRAs. And then this is looking forward a bit. So next steps would be the incentive agreement. We would draft an incentive agreement between the Community Reinvestment Agency and the Siena Hills Auto Mall. And then I wanted to note that these parallels that we have in this incentive agreement that's being proposed that kind of echo what the state and this, since we don't have our own evaluation criteria at Washington City, we're kind of borrowing from the school board and the state to make sure that this is a good project. And the proposed sales tax incentive would be post-performance, just like the EdTIF. It would be a refundable tax credit rebate, just like the state sales tax. And it would be up to 50% of new city point of sale. So the post is 0.5, so up to 50%, that was the 0.25% of sales tax revenues to the city. And that's the only portion that legally we can negotiate on, and definitely within a CRA. And then the incentive would be conditional upon project development, the project that we approve 100%, and it's 100% proportional to the project performance. So if they underperform, then obviously these sales projections are off, and if they overperform, then these sales projections are off. But what we have to work with is our best vetted sales projections. And then last is the agency would be able to review and consider approval of the final agreement. So that would come at a later date. Any questions?
So if things don't go that well, the city's not going to be in any position of any liability for anything. It's going to be all, the only thing that's positive is for us, for the city, is that the income that we will get are the additional taxes. But if things fall way back and it doesn't really pan out, they spend $80 million, that's not going to affect the city in any negative way, right?
Correct. So in other, I've evaluated several other auto dealership incentive agreements throughout the state. Some of them do waive impact fees. Some of them pay for roads. Some of them do environmental mitigation. Some of them, it's a lot of upfront costs. Cities are allowed to do that. In this case, we're not asking for that. And this is a wonderful project to come to the area. It has such a return on the investment, and the investment is proportional to the performance of post-performance of the dealerships when they come in. So in that regard, the state did have an audit of their incentive agreements, and so I reviewed those as well to see, what kind of things were maybe not as positive, or what things were highlighted in those agreements, to make sure that we have a solid, good agreement. And we don't have the agreement yet. This is just a kind of forced preview of what I anticipate being included in that agreement.
Rusty, as you were talking, I remembered something that I'd read, and the two that are the highest acceptable uses for these benefits is big box, we won't say their name, and car dealerships. So these are very, very well established, and so their performance is probably studied. And I imagine if I were investing $80 million, then I would have already done my due diligence to make sure that the project's success. I think it's a good use for this. But anyway, that's all.
We do have the Siena Hills Auto Mall team here. If you have any specific questions for them, I'm sure they can talk to you from, I'm good at going over the data and really analyzing and going through things with a fine tooth comb, and I like to analyze other projects and look at projections, but they could probably tell you some of the funner things about the project if you have any questions about
I
that.
do. I actually have one. Is it Mr. Wheeler? So I went in last night to order a new Bronco.
Uh-huh.
They said a year and a half.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So are you concerned about supply line issues as this plays forward for you?
Yeah, so how, well, let me just say first, obviously, thanks for being here, City Councilman, Mayor, and all that. My name's Jared Wheeler, for the record. We've been working on this project for 2 years and working with all the manufacturers and dealers, right? We've been doing it from both sides. And first, I want to just say how every manufacturer and every dealer that we're working with are just so in awe at this project, the City of Washington, how beautiful it is off this exit. And it's been just really incredible to be a part of it. But in those communications, so we're in a funny point, and I can't kind of announce some exciting news, which I wish I could, but we're at a point where for a new point to be issued, you have to be able to fulfill allotments to dealers, right? For example, we don't name specific brands. Is that what you're not doing? Okay, so take some Highline brand, and they can say
I
yes.
just said Bronco, so.
Yeah, okay. So I can say a model. So take a A4 or a Q7, something of that nature, whichever brand that would be, right? You look at that and they say, okay, there's enough Highline sales to support a new point in this area. But what we have to do first is fulfill the allocations I owe to all the other blank dealers in the target area and fulfill this allotment. So we're going through this fun cycle of catching up with it, but already gone through all the minutia and all the process of the market studies to prove that a new point should exist there or be opened. And so it's kind of fun because we've been able to do all this legwork, which normally you're under the gun trying to wait for that. And now we kind of have a big pipeline built up of all these different guys ready to go on it. But yeah, that's a very good question. And it's one of those things, they're going to take in between a year and a half to build a building like this of this caliber, right? They're Highline auto dealerships where it's, imported tile from Italy for, all the different types of stuff. I won't say brand names, but it's pretty fun. It's pretty exciting.
And I understand the fundamental problem with making the vehicles is more in the chips,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
computer chips, rather
Yeah.
than the manufacturing
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good point.
It's
Lay
good
on
to see
those
you, Jared.
questions.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Any additional questions? This is a public hearing, correct? So there's two of you out there in addition to Jared.
To answer, if I may.
Go ahead.
As far as this being, just talking about this concept as a whole, right? It doesn't go, I wish I could say that was going in my pocket, right? This money. It's not. It's something that we're offering to these dealers who, at this caliber, we're working with really large groups, a lot larger than what we're used to locally here. And they're used to these sort of things. Like you mentioned, it's a commonplace when you're looking at bringing a point somewhere, and they're kind of used to it. And the reality is nobody's forced to come to this auto mall, right? In the beginning, the whole point is we want to be able to get them to come here first. Once it starts getting established, it's a lot easier as the time goes. That's why I think it's so brilliant to have it set up on a 10-year. If you have someone come in at year 5 and it takes them a year and a half to build it, that money, you're still going to generate, that number of the 10-year money, but you're only paying out the 2 or 3 years for that 0.25%, and it's a big deal. And on top of that, I hate when you're looking at something you're giving away when really it's something you're receiving, right? Something that you didn't have. And this project is something that if they don't come here, they're going to go to other cities, right? And that's something that's a pretty bold thing to be the first person to choose to come here, and the second and the third. All those things matter, right, when it comes to this sort of stuff.
And I would guess that you're going to hire local craftsmen and buy local products, so that will infuse
Yeah.
sales tax in the
Yeah, of course.
from anything you generate
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
construction. And
It's a big deal. It's a huge project, and it's so beautiful. I wish, this is beautiful. You did a great job, Rusty. All the numbers and all that stuff. I know it's fun seeing that, but actually looking at it and seeing the virtual creation that we've made and seeing all these different dealerships there, it'll be an experience. You'll be coming the sign that we have, I don't know if everyone knows that, but we're having Washington City on that sign. So it'll be Siena Hills Auto Mall at Washington City, right? And it'll be big. It'll be right on that corridor as you're coming in, and it's going to have a really big wow factor. I mean, I can get goosebumps talking about it, but it's been 2 years in the making, so I'll stay calm. But it's going to be a really beautiful project. All these manufacturers are moving in such a different way. You know, the auto industry's kind of changed a lot, and people are a lot more educated, buying online, all these different things, and these are kind of a lot of stuff will be changed in this mall. Nothing's ever been done like this. I know that Rusty said that nothing had been done like this in the state of Utah. Nothing's been done like this in the country. This will be something that's modeled after. It's hard to have this whole the raw land, having all these people with unbiased, wanting to bring the major players into one roof. Normally you have bias and you don't want all that competition coming to one place, right? So it's hard to accomplish that. But it will be something that's modeled off after. It's pretty special. And all these new programs they're rolling out, it'll be a pretty experiential process, you know, to buy a car in the future. It's going to be fun. Yeah.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any additional questions, comments?
Did you sell Ford?
Yeah. Hey, I have a Bronco.
Completely
You know. Okay.
What year?
21.
Got a 66.
Oh,
Sorry,
still
man.
looks
All
good.
right.
I indulged a little bit there. Sorry.
Me too. Sorry. I like cars.
With no additional questions or comments, anything, Tara, from online or anything?
We did not have any online comments, Mayor.
If I could chime in, I'm Adam Long, I'm the attorney. Just for the sake of our meeting minutes, could we officially open the public hearing, request comments, and then close the public hearing, just so
I
it looks
thought I
nice
said
in our
that.
minutes?
We haven't got to the point of closing it, but I will open the public hearing for public comment. Seeing none, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mayor, I'll make the motion. We close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Bundy second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Goat's eye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward eye.
Staley, aye.
Okay, move on to item 3, consideration to approve a resolution adopting the project area plan for the Siena Hills. Is that a I, or is that just a
Siena Hills 1,
Siena Hills 1
in case we do
community
it 2.
reinvestment project area?
Mayor, we've seen that in our packet. Is there any need for us to go over that further, or are we ready for a motion?
I have some questions on this itself, and it was more just clarification, reading through the description. It talked about excluding the Maverick and Black Bear Diner, but it doesn't exclude the other 2 lots that are in that Siena Hills development. I don't know if we need to add those, because I know that the current restaurant that's being built there, and then there's an additional lot there, but it doesn't specifically say no. Now, the map depicts it well. I'm just asking maybe legal's advice if we need to include those lot numbers from this as excluding them as well. Yeah.
No, we don't need to do that. We have the map and the legal description really just define the outer boundary of the project area.
In my opinion, is the same. We don't need to mention by name the lots that are outside of that boundary. For some reason, we mentioned by name a couple of the businesses that are outside of that boundary, but I don't have the opinion that we need to mention those lots by name.
Thank you, Thad.
And that was the 6 parcels, about 43 acres that's within that.
That's correct.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I appreciate Councilman Coates following up on that. That was kind of my question to Rusty earlier, is just that area, you know, on the CRA project area plan exhibit, we do see kind of that pink outline with the blue area, and I just wanted to clarify that this is entirely the Siena Hills Auto Mall. So I appreciate that question. I don't know, this is the intent is for that specifically. So am I seeing reassurances from staff that this is the
You're approving
area?
this. You're approving this boundary here, which would be outside that.
But I appreciate what you're asking, because I have the same question on what if it changes, right? What if the auto mall doesn't happen and they want to put something else under here? Is there provisions for that still works under the CRA?
Well, it wouldn't
Or does it have
necessarily need
be
to work
the
under the
auto?
CRA. They could just build there and the CRA could just stay, right?
Yeah, I agree. I'm just asking if they're not going to get any tax incentive based on, it's only auto dealerships that get that tax incentive, or is it anything that gets built in this area?
That's a great question. So what we're approving right now is for the sales tax increment, or the TIF, for of that portion of sales tax increment to go to the agency. And then the next steps is the agreement then with the specific business, so the specific project. So you first do an overview of the area and the terms of that area, and then it's specific with each project within the area. In this case, where the city or the agency is looking at an agreement specifically with the auto mall, and then the auto mall, it would be upon them to have the individual agreements between. So the city's portion of the incentive, or the incentive portion, would go directly to the auto mall, and then the auto mall would incent the dealerships. And those agreements would be separate. And we structured it that way. We do have the option to structure it with each dealership.
I think his question is a little bit different. His question is if an auto dealership doesn't end up coming, but a restaurant ends up being built in the spot that was designated for the auto mall.
So I understand this is
the
plan,
restaurant be eligible?
So the first, thank you, Jeremy. So I need that too, but on this first item, we're just identifying the area, but we haven't identified what's in it, correct? It's just, this is the area. And then the next items will identify that it's an auto mall.
Right.
Well, we're establishing the agency, and we're identifying the area. Anybody who wants to apply for anything, an incentive inside the agency, still has to come towards us.
Okay, but we've already
Still missing you?
We've just step by step with me, I guess, tonight. So we've already established the agency.
Correct.
So we established that a couple weeks ago. Okay, but what we're establishing here is we're saying, yes, we want a CRA in this area. That's all on this first item, just breaking it down. First item, we're just establishing the area. And so my next question is, if we're going to address it later, then I'll ask that question later about what happens if the auto mall doesn't come in. Where does the tax incentive go to?
So the way I'm understanding that is, if an auto mall doesn't come in, and the application would come back, a new application would come back, or not. They don't even have to apply to it, but another applicant could come back in and apply to the agency, which is this body. And then it would be up to this body to agree or not agree and meet those.
But later on,
right,
the only thing we're doing tonight is we're moving forward with the auto mall.
Right.
The area for the auto mall.
Well, that's this item.
And then the budget for it. But I see what you're saying, Councilman. I think
I just want to be clear, and we can address that
I
later if
understand.
we're ready to move on from that.
Adam, did you have some comment?
Yeah, if I can chime in, I know it's hard to break into a conversation via Zoom. So if you think about this process, we do have the agency. That's our separate legal entity that has the statutory power to do economic development type activities. So exactly what we're talking about here. We then create the project area, which that is effectively adopting the project area plan. And the real effect of that is creating the boundary of the project area. Within that project area, the agency can exercise its powers. We then adopt the project area budget, which does not control the flow of tax dollars. It's just a set of financial projections required by statute. And then we come to the interlocal agreement, which is the third item in this set. And that's really approving the funding, essentially the funding from the city to the agency to undertake those economic development activities. And then at some point down the road, we'll come back to the agency board with what we call a participation agreement. And that'll be the incentive agreement between the agency and the auto mall. So terms like what happens if it's not an auto mall? What if they don't get it built within a certain time frame? What if it's not as expected and in whatever way, shape, or form? That will be covered under that agreement. So that agreement will be what protects the agency's money from getting paid out for something that we're not expecting or that we're not trying to incentivize.
So Adam, if I'm understanding correctly, the budget doesn't ensure that the funds flow to the agency. So for example, well, and obviously if something else develops there and it's something that the city may entertain, or the agency rather may entertain incenting, I'm assuming we'll have to go over a new plan and budget specific to that project.
So, no, not really. If in this hypothetical, let's say the auto mall doesn't happen and we're 5 years down the road and we still have the project area in place, the agency still has the ability to exercise its powers within this particular area. So we wouldn't have to go through this whole public hearing, plan adoption, budget adoption process. We would just be looking at probably a new interlocal agreement between the agency and whatever tax entities participate, and then a participation agreement between this hypothetical new business. But that's nothing we're doing today restricts the agency's ability to do something else in the future, really, until we get to that agreement with the developer, with the auto mall in this case. It's totally at the agency's discretion what happens here as far as incentives go.
And just as a reminder, this body is also the agency. And so your authority is expressed.
You can do what you want.
Which
And-
is
I just
what
wanted
is
to
the
make sure we
likelihood
weren't-
of a disagreement?
This also may make more sense within the context of what we typically see, where we have interlocal agreements with property taxing entities. And so we don't necessarily know what projects, but it's the setup for the projects based on an evaluation criteria. And then each project would have to be evaluated on an agreed upon evaluation criteria. So it would make more sense if they changed up and did something else in that regard, because then we wouldn't have to start the whole process over again with negotiating all those interlocal agreements with other taxing entities. So in this case, it's probably unique from what Adam usually deals with the sales tax, just sales tax exclusively.
Yeah, I appreciate that flexibility. I'm very comfortable with the project area plan. Mayor, are you, Councilman, are you ready for a motion?
I'm ready.
A
You're all
motion,
ready.
a motion that this agency approve a resolution adopting the project area plan for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area.
Second by Coates.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll go on item 4, consideration to approve a resolution adopting the project area budget for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area.
Mayor, I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm comfortable as well making this motion unless there's questions.
So just want to make
Now a
sure.
little bit, okay.
But since this is just new to us, I just want to make sure we're clear. When we're talking area budget, it's just the projected budget we went over. But so is that, so it's just the numbers that are in our packet, right? These are just projected.
Right. These are the projections, and the projections are contingent upon the actual. So the terms of the agreement would be the 10 years, the 0.25%, and then those figures could obviously change because they're based on actual sales tax. We're not doing incentives based on projected sales tax. It would be on actual sales tax.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution adopting the project area budget for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area.
Second by Coates.
Area budget.
So,
Area budget.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you. Item 5, consideration to approve a resolution adopting the interlocal agreement with Washington City for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area. I hear no questions asked. I'll entertain a
Mayor,
motion.
if I may just clarify one thing with Adam. Adam, on this motion, just for clarity of the board present, This would be a motion of the agency to approve the interlocal agreement on behalf of the agency, and then we'd need a meeting of the city council to approve that same agreement in a different capacity, correct?
Correct. And that's on the agenda when you reconvene as the city council, along with a plan ordinance, which is the final step in the project area creation.
Just wanted to clarify that
Thank you.
for the mayor and council.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. This is Councilman Staley. So this body acting as the redevelopment agency, a motion that we approve a resolution adopting the interlocal agreement with Washington City for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project area.
Mayor, I can second that.
Thank you. You have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward I.
Staley, aye.
All right, those are all approved. Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mayor.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll see you in about 15 minutes.
It's exciting, Mayor.
Welcome to our meeting. We're also holding this electronically on washingtoncity.org/meetings. Those of you that would like to join us, we would enjoy having you. Happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. Don't eat too much. Oh, go ahead. Well, we appreciate you being here on a different night to help accommodate maybe those in the council or in the city who are leaving tomorrow to go somewhere else. I've asked Councilman Staley if he will offer our invocation and Councilman Coates if he will offer our Pledge of Allegiance.
Gathered here in Washington City. We're grateful for thy hand of providence that has been upon this area. We're grateful for the good people who live here and for those who work to provide the modern conveniences. We're grateful for the freedoms and protections that are offered in this land. We ask that thou would share thy Holy Spirit with us this night, that we may have the wisdom and the foresight to make wise decisions and decisions that will be in the best interest of Washington City and those who live and visit this place. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Move on to item 1, approval of the agenda for the evening.
Mayor, it's my understanding that the closed session has been taken off. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't have use for it anymore, so we
Okay.
can
All right, we'll take that off.
end early tonight.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, deleting our closed session, which is the last item.
Bundy, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Announcements, just one. Monday after Thanksgiving, we have our annual Christmas and Dixie tree lighting and celebration at Veterans Park. We invite all of you to come enjoy our festivities.
Then, Mayor, the only thing I'll add to that is that City Hall will be closed Thursday and Friday for observance of Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Anything to declare to abstain from or any conflicts? If not, we'll move on to item 4, our consent agenda. Item A, approval of the minutes, consideration to approve the minutes from the City Council meeting of 11/8/21, 11/9/21, 11/10/21. Final plat. 1, consideration to approve a final plat for Finley Farms, Phase 1A, located approximately 4300 South, 700 East, applicant MST 150 LLC. Consideration to approve a final plat for Finley Farms, Phase 4, located approximately 4300 South, 700 East, applicant Bright Ideas REI. And a final plat amendment, consideration to approve a final plat amendment for Stam Sund Estates, located at approximately 3287 South Stam Sund Lane, applicant Justin Gee.
Mayor,
No, I got some questions on the Finley Farms.
what do you think I was going to do?
I think you were going to move forward, Councilman Bundy.
Go ahead.
So I have a concern that I think I brought up during preliminary plat, but I'm looking at the plats now, and it has to do with the future trail that we're proposing between this Phase 1A and 4. There's a 24.75 platted roadway between the two parcels, but it doesn't even encompass the whole canal easement. And they have the open space, but they don't call out that there's a trail easement through that property in the open space. So it has to be covered one way or another as we keep bringing these plats on along this canal trails, that we get the trail easement as part of it. So I'm looking at Phase 1A, and that's the one it affects the most, but I don't understand what this platted roadway, if it's a platted roadway, then is it a Washington City roadway, or can we currently utilize that for the trail, but there also needs to be a trail easement on the open space segment. And then there's going to be this gap between the two parcels that has a platted roadway.
Yeah, I'm unaware of the trail coming through there. I just wanted to clear that up. You guys looked like you were looking for an answer there.
Well, it's in our master plan to do the canal trail along this 50-foot easement of the canal. So that trail's there. So we need to add it. So either we need a table and get it added or make it a condition. We just need to have a trail easement on the open space to cover our trail for the future.
And I agree with you, Councilman. I appreciate you seeing that. The question is do we condition final plat on that being brought back, or do we say bring this back to our next meeting? There's part of me that wants to see that before we approve it, and I don't want to be heavy-handed, but we have talked trails so many times during this meeting that the length of that trail is just, it's critical.
Well, then I'd make a motion we table the item 1A and 4, or phase 1A and 4 until we get this resolved.
I'm representing Adam. I'm representing the applicant. State your name. So my name is Austin Chappell. I'm with American Engineering. I'm just filling in for Adam Allen. He's the normal project manager that's dealing with this. He was the surveyor that prepared these plats. He explained to me before I came tonight that the 50-foot easement is the canal easement for the irrigation line that's existing through that area, that will serve as the trail easement with the canal. And then
I agree, but the problem we have is that we don't have right to be on there without an additional easement.
Okay.
So the only way we can convey that is to have the trail easement on the plat, saying that this is a trail easement as well, and then that gives the city access to access it as an easement, because currently the canal company, we do not have access to go along the canal without permission for a trail currently.
The existing easement benefits the canal company against the property owner. And what the city needs is an easement that benefits the city against the property owner.
for the trail.
Also with the existing easement is it was essentially an easement document that was declared by the canal company without consent of the owners. And the court, that hasn't been challenged in court, but as a matter of legal position, the city does not want to rely on an easement that the canal company recorded against property owners without their consent. And so we would want a document that makes it clear that this applicant, this property owner, is conveying to this city an easement right.
For the trail.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be any more expansive than the existing easement that's there. That would be sufficient. But we need something that indicates consent of this applicant to this city having that right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, who's in ownership of that though?
Their ownership of this property.
Okay, that's what I want to make. I just hope, because
So-
sometimes the canal company has ownership.
But based on this property boundary, and the majority of them along this are owned by private individuals. There's a random few that are owned by the canal company.
So
but this,
the chain of title on there are some really historic documents that are
this isn't one of them though.
I agree, but along some sections of that, it appears to be a deed, but the deed appears to only convey an easement, not land. And then there's one or two that can appear to convey land, but you're right. This is not one where the canal company appears to have ownership. It would be the subservient tenant, the landowner that owns the land and can convey easement rights over those. Now, at the same time, simultaneous with all of this, we're trying to negotiate with the canal company to grant us all of the rights within the easement that they claim, as we're trying to reach some understanding with them about how to manage this space and how to build it out in the future.
So, and that stems to my other question is, if we have a 24.75 foot platted roadway, which isn't going to be a road, it potentially could be part of the trail, not part of the trail. But what is that? I mean, it says it's Washington City, so does that?
Is that what this strip is that I'm trying to draw, but it's not giving me ownership, but you know it's, okay.
It says it right here that it's a platted roadway.
Supposedly, it's
Where
a
was that in
historic-
relationship to your, I guess what I'm,
Which phase are you looking at, Councilman?
That one right there. And you can see it's got the open space over the canal, which it's good because then it's room for the trail. We just need to, it's two questions twofold. Is if it's already a platted roadway, I guess if it's the city's roadway, then it's just a management of that property that the city already maintains.
My understanding of that platted roadway was an old historic platted roadway that followed the old section lines. And so it just remained there from years and years ago.
It's a little land there, an old platted roadway. No ownership,
Yeah.
even though it says city.
And in the historic surveys, those were not uncommon.
Is that in phase 4, that 24-foot?
24 goes to the east side of that road.
Okay, let me just bring that. Yeah, so the piece that we're concerned with is this one right here for you folks.
So, yeah, and
And you own that, and he's asking that you put an easement on there for a trail easement.
I would entertain that we'd gladly put the easement in there for the trail, but not table it tonight. Maybe make that a condition, if that's something you guys are willing to do.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I'm with Councilman Coates on this one. We've just been so clear for the last 2 years on the need for those trail easements. Do we see that on both these phases? Are we seeing this on 4B as well?
So 4 butts up against the east side of the road, so it probably doesn't affect that because it's outside of the 50-foot canal easement. So I would feel comfortable moving forward with that one because it doesn't affect it. But
So
not,
you're talking about
but not-
phase 1.
yeah, but not 1A at the time because I agree with Councilman Staley. We've mentioned it every time in the preliminary stage. It needs to be addressed, and we were told there, don't touch it, and then it's being touched when we get to the.
Was your
final
motion
detail.
then to table item 4B for the
4B1.
4B1? I'll second your motion, Staley.
I don't think I've made that motion yet, so I
I
should.
thought you did make a motion.
No,
I thought you said I'll motion.
It was more of a discussion, but I'd be happy to make the motion that we table 4B1 to the following.
Are you going to make your motion to fit his second?
Yep. We're going to do it backwards tonight. I'm going to make.
Bundy,
the
do you want a
motion.
second?
Go ahead.
Make the second. I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda excluding item 4B1 and table that item to the next council meeting and have the updated map presented at that time.
Bundy, second.
Are you done?
I'm done.
All right. Motion and second, roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward aye.
Ivy, aye.
Goat's eye.
Bundy, aye.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Move on to item 5, roadway dedication. Consideration to approve a roadway dedication for Bluff View Drive between 1100 East and Washington Parkway. Applicant Dean Terry.
Mike, I know you're online. Are you taking this one? I don't know who wrote the report. There he is.
I guess I am. Not really sure what it is other than the dedication of the section of roadway.
John Hemke wrote it.
That's probably sufficient, council. It's just Bluff View Drive. You're familiar with the road. There's a portion of that that's been undeveloped and hasn't been dedicated yet. It'll be dedicated to the city by this application, if approved.
Mayor, if there's no comments, I'll make a motion. We approve the roadway dedication for Bluffview Drive between 1100 East and Washington Parkway.
Bundy, second.
I do have a motion and a second, roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates eye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward aye.
Staley, aye.
That's approved. Item 6, minor subdivision. Consideration to approve a minor subdivision for the Bueno Vista Triangle located approximately 325 East Bueno Vista Boulevard. Applicant Washington City.
Eldon, is I doing this one or are you doing this one? Okay.
Thank you for the reminder, council. The applicant is requesting approval for the Bueno Vista Triangle minor subdivision. The applicant is proposing to split the present 8.85 acres into 4 parcels, with parcel 1 consisting of 8.38 acres, parcel 2 consisting of 0.08 acres, parcel 3 being 0.22 acres, and parcel 4 consisting of 0.17 acres. Washington City will maintain ownership of parcel numbers 2, 3, and 4, and Washington City will sell parcel 1. We currently don't have any intent to sell that at this time, but we'll put out an RFP, which council will be involved with at that time. The proposed minor subdivision is currently zoned C2. The surrounding zoning includes R3 and C2 to the east, open space to the south, and PUD and residential 6,000 square foot minimum to the west. Staff has reviewed the requested proposal, and the proposed Bueno Vista Triangle minor subdivision conforms to the standards as set forth in the zoning regulations and subdivision ordinance of the city. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on November 17th and unanimously recommended approval of the Bueno Vista Triangle minor subdivision based on the following findings and conditions as seen in your report. And we're happy to answer any questions at this time.
I think we're all pretty familiar with this. We said open space to the south.
It's the freeway.
Is that what we call I-15 now, is open space?
Yeah.
Okay, just depends on who's driving. Mayor, if there's no conversation on this, we're familiar with this parcel. This is Councilman Staley, a motion that we approve a minor subdivision for the Buena Vista Triangle located at approximately 325 East Buena Vista Boulevard. Second by Coates.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's approved. Move on to item 7, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Queens Ridge, Phase 2 through 5, located at approximately 3500 South and Washington Fields Road. Applicant Stephen Simister.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plat for the Queens Ridge Phases 2 through 5. This particular subdivision is proposing 86 lots on an area covering 40.19 acres. The zoning designation at this location was recently rezoned to include single-family residential 12,000 square foot minimum and 15,000 square foot minimums. The surrounding zoning is R115 and R110 to the north and east, R112 and RA half to the south, and R112 to the west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. Request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on November 3rd, 2021, and unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Queens Ridge Phases 2 through 5 subdivision based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions. I do want to take note to condition 13 and condition 14, which were added by the Planning Commission. 13 states the rock retaining wall design shall encompass a 20+ foot height designed to retain over and beyond the noted 18-foot dimension as found on lot 510. And then condition 14, phase 1 will include the build out and expansion of Washington Fields Road along all of the proposed development. And we're happy to answer any questions at this time.
So while you talked about the rock wall, are we comfortable moving forward with 20-foot stacked walls?
It's pretty steep down there. I mean, I live in that general neighborhood, and Wild Horse Ridge is pretty steep. My question was in regards to lot 509. Does that face, is that a walkout lot, or does that face north? looks like that may be one of the areas where you could see one of those. You know,
I'm more concerned about, they're just massive walls. And usually a lot of places you have step backs and stuff after 8 feet or 10 feet.
That's kind of been the tradition. We haven't had one come before us for a while though. I mean, we've just seen some failures in the area and some, how do you say that politely? How do you say eyesore politely?
I mean, it brings up that we've talked about looking at our, I think I've talked about it with the manager, I don't remember, in the council, about modifying the wall ordinance to, I mean, you can engineer it, but is it the right thing to do with that amount of steepness for maintenance and handling the drainage around those walls? So the 20-foot walls concern me. Without at least a step up, like an 8-foot or 10-foot, and then 8 foot back and then step it up again.
I agree with that.
The other concern I had was that well, not concerned, but happy to see that the 10-foot trail's there. But if phasing wise, as part of the first phase, I'd like to get an easement that says we can put a trail there with the first phase along the canal easement that way.
So as I understand, the first phase is there. This is going to be phases 2 through 5, but do we not have it for that existing phase?
We don't,
1?
I don't think we do.
Because that's going to come right down to that school area.
The school, oh, is this, yeah, we have the school, that's paved, it's built. That trail is built.
So I'm just trying to
from the
remember how
school.
far up it goes.
It's pretty close, around lot 10 there.
So it would be for the, that, it would be not, I mean, I understand that they're probably going to phase from Washington Fields Road east, and it looks like that's the way they've,
So for benefit, the city wants, if they're going to build all this at once, it might not be a moot point, but what my thought was, whatever the first phase of phases 2 through 5, that easement be granted to the city at that time, so that it's
That's a
not
good idea.
holding us up if the city decides to build the trail when they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the development gets to it, then they can get it and get their impact fee credits for it.
I think I support that 100%.
Drew, while we're discussing, can you pull the overhead alignment up on this?
Just this area right through here.
Yeah, it's steep. There's no doubt, and there's there's hills and.
So there's 2 different stacked rock retaining walls between 519, 20, and 18, and then down beginning at 510. So did the Planning Commission make any distinction between those 2 different rock walls, or was it the same consideration on both?
It was the same. They just noticed it was called out at a certain footage and wanted to make sure that the right footage was on there.
Okay.
So,
Drew, where's High Noon Circle on that map?
on this right
Yeah.
there, that's High Noon right here.
Okay.
And then the lots you're talking about are right about here where my arrow's floating around.
Yeah.
9 and
Well, if
so-
you go to the right, you see that triangle. That's 519 and 520. 520 is at the tip of the triangle.
Yeah.
Let me give you a reference point. You can kind of.
So it goes.
If you went to Street View, you could kind of see how steep that grade is on Wild Horse Ridge. I mean,
Let's do that if you can pull it up quick.
Well, I don't have that in my aerial because this is a
'cause
city
it's
map.
a-
You're
yeah.
on Google Earth, and it's. But it is. If you've been up on Wild Horse Ridge, all those lots, I mean, they're all separated by like 10 to 12 foot retaining walls on that north side. And
is what, Councilman, are you saying then along the back side of lots, say 510 through 513, those 4 lots, that rather than a whatever 20-ish foot wall, that they stack those and do 2 separate walls?
Yeah, so I was just saying have a setback.
That's tiered.
Yeah.
It's a tier. So you have one tier between them. If they're 20 is the max, then you just have a tier in the middle at 10. Now it takes out from the lot. It's still the same size lot, but it takes out of their usable. But I think it's more, I think we need to get away from those 20-foot stacked walls without a step in them or something.
We're looking pretty close to that also on lot 520.
We have 520 and then 510 through 13.
The south, I guess the south, 10 or south side of 509. But I'd like to hear the engineer rep or the applicant maybe address that when we get to that point.
So we did have a discussion regarding rock walls and height, and I do remember the developer, but I won't use his name, but we did talk about this recently, another development there in Washington Fields. And I think a lot of the same ground is what we covered then. The same concerns for me still are there. And you might think that we live in a very stable area, but there's actually a little known Washington fault that could create problems for anything like this, and it has to be a consideration. I agree. I think a step would give more support. I'm not a practicing engineer or anything, but I think that's something that at least should be identified, whether that's something that would make it safer, make it more, in case there was anyway.
Now, Council, I remember recently that some of the geotechs are coming back, and I don't know if it's rock walls or, you two might know more than, I'm just trying to remember, there's something about, and I think Wayne Rogers is one of the top geotechs down here, found in some of his analysis, it was better to have one bigger wall versus a step in his ability for stabilization. Now, do you recall that? I know we've had that discussion in
Drew, I think
council.
The other consideration is runoff, water runoff, that you'd be able to get that off.
I'm just throwing that out.
I've never seen that evaluation, but
I'm trying to remember something that said, I just want to leave, because ours was limiting, saying we had to go up and then we had to step back, and it was coming back with some of the geotech saying, well, because all the cities did what we did, and they're coming back saying, well, we need to let you folks know that sometimes it's better in certain circumstances. They want to take that and have that freedom. I'm
not going to speak
discussion
for Wayne or any of AGC's. Just my experience is that you start your wall design over when you step it back. So the amount of pressure you got to deal with is at that 10-foot level instead of 20.
No, I'm just bringing that up because
you can engineer it. You can do a 40-foot wall, and I'm sure they got an engineering way to get it passed, but I'm just concerned. I think that we should have a step back for these lots.
I think the International Building Code, I forget the chapter.
Appendix J usually is the one that deals with this.
Chapter J
I know that one well.
Addresses this, but I think the discussion was, or at least when I've talked with you about this before, is that if it has an engineer that designs it, then they could, it could overcome the Appendix J, but Appendix J does show the tiered walls.
Yeah, and so does our code, but I knew that we were coming back sometimes looking at it saying, every now and then we want to have the flexibility in case there's certain circumstances. So I'm just bringing that up as a remembrance or a discussion we've had in the past about that. I like the step, to be personal with, that's my preference, to be honest with you.
The other thing to consider too is just aesthetically. I'm guessing that lots 510 through 513 are walkout basement lots. Are they walkout basement lots? I'm looking for a nod there. Okay.
9 is for sure. But
that's an east-facing lot.
Or it could be north facing too. It's on the corner. But more than likely, I think the front's going to be off the east.
To Councilman Ivy's point, we've dealt with some other development in this area, and the thing that we were very particular with when it came to those large rock walls was not only the design, but also just the color that it blends in with that area. Because down on the lower section south of Camino Real is fairly flat, but then you get up along the bench there, and as that grade goes up the hill, I think. This is a great development. I don't want to nitpick the walls. I just, we're going to, what's going to be built there is going to be built for a long time. And it'd just be nice to know aesthetically, does it make sense to have a pushing 20-foot wall, or does it make more sense aesthetically to have 2 tiered walls? And I'm confident the developer will use a rock that is consistent with the development, and all throughout. But those are things to consider, because you see that as you're driving east through the field, you see that hillside.
So Drew, the planning commission, as part of their motion, required that all of Washington Fields Road be completed in phase one. Will you just talk to that for a second?
I just kind of pull that. Well, what was happening was they were going to break this up because phase one stopped right up here between 301 and 401. They just wanted them to not leave that gap between 401-2 and the detention. And Mr. Simister, I think, was here and addressed that and said he'd be fine to do that. He got it, you know, why the need, may not have been happy about it, but was willing to say he would do that. So that's really what it was just extending instead of stopping here at 301 and doing the half road thing. He's just going to, during part of phase one, take it all the way up to the Lost Ridge development there.
And we actually really appreciate that. I mean, that's a big help. And this is going to be a great development. Mayor, are you ready? Or I guess we're probably a public hearing, aren't we?
No, this is not a public hearing. But
I'd
you
like
have
to ask that-
questions for the applicant?
I'd like to ask the applicant if he sees a concern with writing the easement for the trail during the first or phase two of this applicant. They see a concern with that.
Hi, I'm Stephen Simister, the applicant. So on the first phase of Queensridge there, I believe, what I was just verifying is what we did is we actually dedicated that over to the city. Is that what you're?
You did on the piece for that first phase.
Yeah.
But on this phase, what we're requesting is that you give us an easement to put a trail there if we beat you, is kind of how I look at it. Like, say you do the first phase and you're only halfway there, but the city wants to go build that section of trail. We just want the right to do it because currently we don't have the right to build a trail on the canal easement without the property owners writing a second easement. Now, if you did this whole thing and platted it in phase one, then it would be dedicated at that time as a trail easement. So because of the phasing, what I'm requesting is that we get that easement as a condition, get that easement deeded at the recording of the first phase of this phase 2 through 5.
Yeah, I don't really see an issue with that at all. That's kind of what our plan would be, is to dedicate that over anyway.
I'm just trying to get that just in case something stalls out and the city still wants to go build the trail.
Yes.
We still have access to go build that. What I want to do is it's done at the first phase final plat. That way it's just there and we can say it works out and the city wants to go build it tomorrow. After the day after you have it done, they can go do it. And you're not ready to go build your remaining phases.
Yeah, I don't see that would be any problem at all to do that.
So is your plan to dedicate that over to the city as well? Just so you don't have to mess with it anymore?
That's what I was just chatting with Brent. We would plan to do the same thing we did in phase 1, is go ahead and dedicate that over as we.
Randy Walker, Civil Science. Don't interrupt Stephen. It's kind of hard to see, but Stephen's actually giving up extra property that's far outside the canal easement. The canal easement veers over into the, I don't know what development that is right there. Chaparral Ridge, maybe, High Chaparral. So he's actually we're suggesting 30 feet of his property, which is above, see the dashed line? That's the canal. Yeah. So it's actually in those lots. So as long as if we want to do it by plat, by phase, but if we have to write a single document easement, that's, I think, fine. But at time of actual plat, he wants to turn it over so his HOA doesn't have any
You want
affiliation.
to turn it over to the city.
So it's consistent,
and
yeah.
So what I'm requesting is just a legal description easement that gives us access along where it's proposed.
And then dedicate it per
And then you can dedicate it per plat to the city later.
And so that easement agreement would just be presented to you. The council's proposing that it would be, the concept to be a condition to approval, and then we would just present to you that easement agreement. Say, hey, on condition of the approval back in such and such date, will you sign this? So that's how it'd come about if necessary. Otherwise, if our timing's no quicker than yours, you would just dedicate it by your plat recording.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Is that correct, Councilman?
But what I'm proposing is we do it on the very first final plat of these phases.
Correct.
One way or the other. Either if you decide to build the whole subdivision and have one final plat, then it would be done at that time. If not, then the first phase 2 on this one.
So your proposal is that the easement agreement occur at the time of recording the first final plat?
First final plat.
Condition of.
As a condition, yeah.
On or before.
What?
On or before.
Do it on or before.
Yep.
Brandy will probably want to just take care of it right away. She'd probably have all the legal ready to go, so just writing it up.
Do you want to speak to the rock wall?
It was my understanding, and I probably would defer to Brandy here, is that we're planning on tearing that anyway. Yeah, is that kind of, yeah, on the wall, that would be our plan?
Sorry. On a preliminary plat, our detailing of grading is shown at a preliminary higher level. So yeah, I mean, we can, this will be the last phase, obviously, everything east of the canal. That road at Wild Horse is steep, and with these being 15,000 square foot lots, I mean, ideally on a hillside, the smaller the lot, the easier it is. When you get these big lots, you're bound to have, you guys know, massive retaining. So depending, the geotech on the job would, when we come back for construction drawings and go through public works, I'm sure it'll be a tiered wall to meet their criteria.
You don't have a problem with us putting a condition on there that requiring that?
Requiring what?
The tiered
Tiering
wall.
of the walls.
Yeah, no, it's city code, so yeah.
It just, with the reason why we brought it up is it just looked like it was just one solid wall. So
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
So, yeah, and technically within city code, you could have an engineer it to that height, but it's increasingly made us, thank you. Same.
So if there's no further comment, Mayor, I'm ready to
Thank
make
you,
a
Mr.
motion.
Sinister. Appreciate it.
Was there a third question?
Well, the only other thing, and I know the quality of work you do, but again, it is super steep, and from the fields on the flatland looking east up along the bench, up along Washington Dome, it's very visible. So to me, it's important that that rock be a consistent color that blends with the subdivision, that blends with the natural scape as much as you can. I just would hate to see varying rock colors along that, because it's so visible. Does that? And I know sometimes it's hard to find that in the different quarries, but I'm just thinking, aesthetically.
I would agree. We want that to look aesthetically nice as well. Just, I think that would be doable to be able to get it kind of with the earth tones that are there, right? I don't think that'd be an issue. Down low where it wasn't as visible, we did use some of the precast block, right? I think this would be more of your natural rock that would be stacking, isn't it? Probably. Yeah, just for aesthetics.
Okay. You want to go, Councilman, or you want me to go?
No, I'll go. You can see if this works for everyone. I'll make a motion. We approve the preliminary plat for Queens Ridge Phase 2 through 5, located at approximately 3500 South and Washington Fields Road, with the findings and conditions provided with staff, with the additional condition number 15, that the rock walls within the development will be no higher than 10 feet, with 10 feet unless there's a setback per city code. Condition number 16, that the canal trail easement will be granted at the first final plat of phases 2 through 5 at final plat.
Or before.
Or before.
Washington Fields will be completed
That was already in there, right?
for planning commission.
I thought it was already in there. Yeah, so that's condition 14. Is phase 1 will be include the full build out expansion. So I think we're covered.
Got it covered?
Bundy, second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. You still want to maybe add about the matching rock?
Well, I'm trying to, I'm confident that it's in the minutes. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a condition, but just to make staff aware that they're going to do their best on the rock to have it match. And does that need to be conditioned?
Yeah, because minutes aren't enforceable. Motions.
You add that, Councilman.
I don't mind adding condition number 16, that the material must be consistent across the material for the walls must be consistent on the walls.
You may want to make a little more clarity. Are we talking consistent in color, consistent in match?
Well, so I'm saying consistent in material types, because if they choose to do a stacked wall, They could do that out of a concrete wall. They could do it out of a rock wall. I'm not trying to limit that unless that's, I'm just saying whatever you do, you need to be consistent on the materials.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, obviously, I don't know that aesthetically a block wall would look great, but, you know, I know it's tough to engineer it. I just think that aesthetically, it needs to look consistent and would, you know, do their best to match the, you know, the natural hillside there, so.
So are you wanting a consistent rock, or are you wanting?
Well, I don't want to engineer their walls from the from here,
but you're
if,
saying the color. So
but
my
I'm
question
saying
is
that I'd hate to have, you know, a white rock and then a pink rock and then a brown rock. Whatever the material they choose to use, it needs to be consistent, and it ought to look, you know, and I know the quality of work they do. That I just hope that they do their best to have it be a natural tone that blends in well with the hillside.
So that's why I'm asking for clarification, because you could do a basalt rock, which is all black, which is native to the area, but maybe not native to that hillside. But I like the basalt rocks, the lava rocks. Some of it's white. You're right. So that's why I'm asking. So
I think I like the word consistent, but I don't feel like I need to get into the details as far as if it's a natural blending rock that's consistent throughout the development. I'm comfortable with that. Or
okay, so
concrete.
I will restate my motion. You tell me if
you just add that part to your motion. Yes.
Okay. My motion number 16, I think. We're on 16 that the walls materials be consistent within the natural landscape of the area.
And I motion my second to include.
Motion and a second, roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Goats, aye.
Ivy, aye.
It feels a lot like we're saying it's a really big wall. Please make it nice. in our efforts, but Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you, that's approved. Move on to item 8, height waiver, a public hearing in consideration to approve a height waiver for HW-21-02 for a 3-story office building located at the northeast corner of Merrill Road and Sandia Road. Applicant Stephen Beasley.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant is requesting a waiver on the maximum height of a building allowed for a structure within the administrative professional zone property. Location is at the northeast corner of Merrill Road and Sandia Road. I think we're familiar with this particular piece. It's been vacant for years, right next to the school. The maximum allowable height as per the zoning regulations is 45 feet. The applicant is seeking approval to extend the height of their proposed new office building to 56 feet at its highest point. So this is just give you a perspective. This is the corner. The light is over here at Sandia and Merrill, and then the school, of course, is down here. Whoop, I lost my floater. There's my floater. And then the office building itself will sit right here. This will be kind of part of the development when they're all done, but the piece we're talking about is right here. So let me move onward. And
so what was, sorry, if you go back to that, are they committing to what is out there to the side of it? What is that?
well, I hate to bring that because that's not part of the thing, but that is a proposed food court.
So they're not committing to that. No.
And they wouldn't be because it's a permitted use in the AP. So, and if something else came along, then that, again, we're not approving the site plan tonight. High probability that'll be there. Yes. Is it, would it be forced with your approval tonight? No. We're just saying we're going to let the building go from 45 to 56 feet. If that helps you, Councilman. I'm just wanting to make that sure that's clear tonight. So moving on, we'll pull up. This is one of the views on the long side and the short side of the building. So the north elevation and east elevation. Again, this is what your building will be. It's a 3-story building. They call them Class A, I guess. Office buildings now is the proper term on them. So that means that they're going to be a little bit higher ceilinged floorways on these instead of your average 9-foot kind of sill plates. These are going to be 10, I think, and 11, or 10, 11, and 12. I can't remember. We can get that. But then the top part of the building, you can see that screening area is all the mechanical stuff, but it'll be behind a screened, portion of the finished elevation on the building. And so that's really what kicks it up over the 50, up to the 56, basically is putting those, all the mechanical on the roof, but also screening it very well from sight and street. So it looks like it's more incorporated into the building itself. So just to give you the other two elevations on then the south and the west, very attractive, probably one of the more attractive buildings we'll have in the city to this point, this particular facility will. So, but that's all I can offer unless you have any questions for me on this, and then we can talk to your applicant.
I don't have any questions, just maybe a comment. When I was looking at this, I went and looked at the other buildings that are actually in the city of St. George, north of Lynn's. As I was looking through this design, it looked to me like if they're going to have this food court area, whatever they decide to do there, whatever that is, the reason, in my mind, and I don't know this, I haven't talked to the applicant, but by placing the mechanical on the roof and screening it is only an attempt to get it off the ground where it probably would make noise and have it air blow on people when they come by. So really the height of the building to me is within, and it makes sense. If people, when height waivers come in and I look at it, I want to know the reason why. And to me, this one makes more sense than others. In other words, I think it's a good reason rather than just trying to get more square footage or something like that.
Well, it used to be that fighting fire with a solar building, but we don't have that issue here, I guess.
No, this will be completely sprinkled building.
Oh, okay. So, but even though, okay, I don't know the code on that, but that always used to be a reason why, you can't get too high, but if it's sprinkled, maybe that takes care of it.
Chief Evans.
Any additional comments or questions? The applicant here? You have any questions for the applicant? I guess they don't have any questions for you. I know, Steve. This is a public hearing. Any in the audience that have a concern or a comment regarding this project? Tara, was there any comments made via online or by mail?
Mayor, we received the single public comment, which I emailed to you yesterday when we closed those public comments. No additional comments came in.
Okay, so noted. Appreciate that. If no additional questions, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mayor, I can make that motion to close the public hearing.
Second by Coates.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you.
And Mayor, can I just clarify? It is going to be completely sprinkled, right? I wasn't out. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't under, because it looks and appears to be above all the square footages. Okay. Just make sure I was right in giving you that statement. So,
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mayor.
folks. Okay, that will be, has the 2-week layover.
Actually,
Mayor, it actually is just the public hearing and then the consideration as well.
Okay.
So Mayor, I can make that motion if there's no other discussion.
Okay, I did read that. All right. No, go ahead.
Isn't that in the ordinance?
We don't have ordinances for height waivers, unfortunately.
Oh.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve a height waiver for HW-21-02 for a 3-story office building located on the northeast corner of Merrill Road and Sandia Road.
Bundy, second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. Item 9, donations, public hearing and consideration to approve a donation to the Senior Companion and Foster Grandparent Program with the 5-County Association of Governments. Joanne Lyman. I didn't see her here.
It's Dwight.
City manager, do you know what they're
Manager,
looking
this
for?
is Joni Lyman. I would need you to take this one if you wouldn't mind, please.
Thank you.
Say that again.
So this is the foster grandparent program.
Right.
If you remember, Joni Lyman came
Right.
a year ago. She has some health issues related to pandemic that she's dealing with. I told her that I'd be happy to present it to you anyway. I think the city council's been very supportive in the past. And I would think that we don't necessarily need to wait for her to feel better before we see what we can do to help.
She wrote a nice letter and offered to receive phone calls. It's a little late for that now, though.
I think we know basically what it is. I thought we could probably move forward without
Sure.
her, if you're okay with that.
Well, there's a public hearing, and any of you that would be unwilling to don't have us donate, I'll talk to you after the council meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing and have a consideration to approve the donation.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We close the public hearing.
And
And can we do it together?
and approve it.
Sure, do it.
And consider approval of the donation to the foster grandparent program with the 5 County Association.
Bundy, second.
The amount is
Just
what,
to clarify the
$1,500?
$1,500.
For the
$1,500.
amount of $1,500.
Thank you.
Seconded, Bundy.
Motion is second, roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ford, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you, that is approved. Item 10, ordinance, continuation of a consideration to approve a zone change request, C-21-24, to change from open space to residential agriculture 1/2, minimum acre, RA 1/2, located approximately 2150 East Washington Dam Road, applicant Desert Sands LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the item was tabled at your November 10th, 2021 meeting. No motion was made following the public hearing and discussion of the proposed zone change. And I think that's why I felt it just was best just to table it for 2 weeks to give you time to think about it. Just to remind you that your planning commission reviewed the item and they unanimously recommended approval of Z-21-24 for the zone change from open space to the RA 1/2 residential agricultural 1/2 acre minimum for this particular. Be glad to answer any questions you might have come up in your 2-week tabling that I can help you with. Again, the applicant stated they're probably going to build 5 to 7 lots, is what he stated when he was here 2 weeks ago. Kind of laid out some different things. We're really not allowed in a zone change to look at a form of that. That's kind of a no-no in the city government thing. So I can just imagine that there's 5 lots probably stacked evenly, maybe with a road, on the side of, I don't know, maybe lots 15, 17, something around there, but.
One of the challenges with this piece is just, it's so long and narrow. And, with the approval of the development to the west and the existing use of the property to the east, it really limits what the owner of this parcel can do with the property. So it's certainly not an ideal situation. And so it's one of those where you have to balance property owner rights, but I don't even know that 1 acre lots could even be feasible in something. It's just a real tough situation. Again, I didn't initially support the density to the west, but on this parcel, I'm not seeing a better option or another option aside from what is being proposed. Taking note and having taken note of the property owners to the east and their legitimate concerns. It's really difficult how one project affects the next project and affects the other owners there. It's not an ideal situation.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the issue I kept thinking, well, we just bump up to an RA1, but then if they get it zoned there and he just sits on it, they can come back and ask for a bonus density as well. And I don't think that's helpful in this case. I think your half zone is I think your best alternative, just due to the fact of something could go RA1 and then bring in a bonus density, and we already have a bonus density it's attaching to, could be more harmful in the long run than just doing the half
But
acre.
that's up to the council if they want to approve
is.
a bonus density. So,
But you're opening a door of a possibility where that half acre is set and done.
well, maybe we need to relook at our bonus density and when it counts too.
Well.
But I'll tell you, I agree with you on portions of the half acre. I'm concerned about everything south of the canal being a half acre. I'm concerned that it's such a funky, skinny piece that potentially it should just be one lot, one parcel. But those are my concerns, and I don't even know if 1 acre is enough down there to kill or to make the parcel be one parcel to the south. But I'm not concerned as much on the northern, I guess it's the southern end. It's so maps backwards on the southern end, but on the northern end toward the river to change that zone, I have concerns there.
So when this agenda item was before us 2 weeks ago, the homeowners to the east, or the property owners to the east, voiced some concerns. And I actually wrote those down and went out and tried to identify. And one was if there is any form of bonus density or any other considerations to change the design. And I verified that there is not. But I tend to look at this one way. This is a difficult piece. It's hard to design it optimally like what we would in an ideal situation. But I just need to have an idea, if we can approve this, what this gentleman or what this developer can do here, because I'm at the limit of my understanding of what else we could do. And I don't know that we have I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Any additional questions or comments? Anybody want to make a stab at a motion?
Mayor, I'm going to make a motion, attempt to move this forward and see where we're at. I'll make a motion to approve a zone change request Z-21-24 to change from open space to residential agricultural 1/2 acre RA 1/2, located approximately 2150 East Washington Dam Road.
Councilman, what do you think about, it's interesting having one kind of flag lot. It's even more interesting having 2 flag lots to that north. I mean, what do you think about seeing if the applicant is amiable to potentially a portion of this with, he's applying for RA 1/2. And I understand that that's your motion and the motion's on the table, but
I feel comfortable withdrawing my motion if there's further discussion. My attempt was just to try to move it.
No, I understand, and it's a tough situation. Mayor, I hate to try to change somebody's application at this point, but I think they kind of heard the concern with the northerly portion of their property that would basically be north of the canal easement. I'd like to hear their thoughts onto that, would they be open to an RA 1/2 on the south portion and an RA 1 on the north portion beginning at the canal trail?
Mayor, I'm going to withdraw my motion for further discussion.
All right. Do we have the applicant here?
Brandy Walker with Civil Science again. In representing the owners, they're all sitting in the back there. I think they're amiable to that. As you guys mentioned, this is an extremely difficult piece to develop. They're working right now with the current phase that's on the ground to try to make those road connections, because there's 2 of them being stubbed to there. I think they're fine with amending their application to be 1/2 and then 1. So that would be the 1, those would be the 1/2. Drawing it up.
Well, I like where you're heading. I just have concerns of just doing more than one lot down there. I'm not, so.
How much room is down there? I mean,
What's the width on that? Do we have? a
what is the?
Can we
Yeah,
flash up the
so
layout?
you're,
or is that
Councilman, are you
just
thinking that
you don't wanna
there
do
still
that?
would be room for 2 lots on that north
No, I'm
portion?
not. I'm suggesting it's over the 1 acre, and you could probably get over 2 acre. I don't know. And
So you could still do,
You do too. So what is the 1 acre service?
Okay.
I'm concerned about having more than one lot down there with all the constraints of the road getting to those lots.
This is a piece of property that's really encumbered by a lot of easements. Didn't ran into it with their first phase. In fact, the city, we talked about the city not even having easement over their existing sewer. There's a canal easement running, there's a
There's an
sewer
easement.
pump. I don't think so.
No, there is.
Is it recorded now? And then there's
It's
a gravity
part of the-
line with an existing regional water line. I think Dennett's gave up almost 2 acres of property to the city. And these guys are gonna end up doing the same, having to gift it to the trails and that. So, I mean, to make this piece viable without having access off Washington Dam Road, to try to meet transportation management plan, to not have another access point out into that road. Really, their only 2 access points are coming from the development to the west.
I want to just kind of throw another wrinkle into the conversation, if you don't mind. So the basis that the Plan Commission recommended approval of RA 1/2 is because they didn't want to have this property go bonus density like the one adjacent to it. With bonus density, there's a credit that has to do with connectivity, with amenities, etc.
Right.
Have you looked at let's say that we approve this RA1? What does that do to
Just
to
on
lot
this
sizes in
bottom
there?
half?
No, I'm talking on the whole thing. Let's say that because I think there's a state lots RA1, RA 1/2 that are the zone designation or the zones that are applicable to this land use designation.
Yeah, well, just put it, like I say, I just did the math for you on that south piece anywhere. On the north piece, it's 1.5, actually less than 1.5 acres with the distance it's kind of given on this map.
From the easement north?
It's
from the
200 by 350. This is 350, and that's all the way up here, and the easement's back here. So from this line, that's 350 by 200. 70,000 divided by 43,560.
So there's only, so if that portion were approved with a 1 acre lot or 1 acre RA1, they could only do 1 lot there.
You'd only get 1 lot down there on that other side of the easement.
And that 50 foot on either side of the canal is non-buildable?
You mean, well, the canal itself, they can't build in it. You know, this area, I'm kind of blown out of proportion here a little bit on my thing, but you know what I'm talking about. That line that crosses this way is that easement they can't build anything in. So then you're talking, north of the canal easement, south of the canal easement. So north of the canal easement, I'm coming up with just under 1.5 acres. On the south end, you have the remainder, in which the motion is to have half acre there. I think that's pretty adequate. The bonus density, they probably wouldn't be able to get too much different than that anyway.
The problem is they can utilize the space in the easement as part of their acreage.
Yes, they can.
So that puts them over to 2 acres.
So if we approve this zoning base, you're looking at 5 lots north of the easement and 1 lot south of the easement if you do a split.
Well, what I'm saying is that we don't have a zone more than an acre, right? I guess what I'm proposing is maybe it makes sense to, because I'm looking at the half acres don't bug me, everything south of the canal easement. It doesn't concern me, but everything north, maybe we need to just rezone that portion right now and relook at this at a later date. But that's not what the applicant's asking, so I'm not trying to, those are my concerns.
You're saying to consider approving everything south of the easement as RA 1/2 and not touching the other portion?
Yeah, leaving that as open space in a new application, but I'm not, they might not want that. That's just.
I wonder if there's enough room to be a full 2 acres, and then you could just give it an RA2.
Well, that's what I'm.
I mean,
But
I'd rather see
but
if they want to do that than have them come back at a future date asking for that one
I'm,
thing. But
I'm not going to sit and dictate what they have to do. So they'd have to suggest that's what they're for. These are my concerns of moving forward on the current application. Is that if this came to us as an R1 one half on the south end and R2 on the north half, then I don't have any concerns.
So you're saying that the north property would have to be a lot that includes the 50-foot easement?
Well, I think that's, I don't know if it has to be or not. I'm just saying that.
But it could be utilized as what he's saying.
As
if you
part
don't.
of the, it could be utilized either way. You're
Right.
saying it could be utilized to get you above the 1 acre.
But that's the
or-
other concern is, is that eventually I know that someday, could be 50 years down the road, we want the trail easement along this segment too. If it makes sense. I mean, we did it on the property to the west. So I would assume as the preliminary plat and the final plat come before us, we'll have a trail easement across. It could be within their property and we just need an easement, but those are things we need to, but they can account for those on those.
Do you mind if I get legal counsel to weigh in on that? Can we do that? Can we split the zoning on the parcel, on a contiguous parcel, and split the zoning to half on RA, half on one side and RA2 or RA1 on another?
Yeah.
Ideally, this would be a wide enough piece to have 1 acre lots, right? The property to the west has one home, right? That encompasses as much property as this.
So Councilman, the 2 pieces, the long, narrow ones, they're actually 1 acre and the other one's 94/100ths of an acre. So they're actually, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you could put your zone change line right at the end of that one property right there, and that keeps you under, that gets you your 1.5, because it's 198 by 350, and that's up to this line right here. So they couldn't make 2 lots back there, and your easement, it takes the easement out of your worry.
I think they could.
Drew, say that again, please.
I'm just saying that if the applicant's amenable to it, let me just get my pencil here, and I'm going to change the color here just so if we made that zone change line right here at the end of this particular property and had it extend over, that leaves that area 198 by 351, and that's where that 1.5 point, it's just barely over an acre and a half, but some of that's in the easement. Even if they put it in there, they can only get the 1 lot out of that north area. And then everything to the south of this line, that imaginary, that lot that's on the west, and the lot on the east where this line breaks through, remains the other part of that, the 6 acres. So that would leave it at 4.5 acres. But part of that again is easement, and then it's RA half, everything south of that. And you guys said you're okay with that, right?
Drew, what if rather than going down to to the north portion of that smaller parcel, what if you just cut it off at the point of lot 21 on Dennett's piece? And because that's the
I mean, up
that's the
here
north
instead.
Yeah.
I worry that we're getting into what Councilman Coates was worried about if we start hitting and we're at 2 acres right there, right? Because I don't have the dimensions. Then they
I
could use
also don't want to give room for. I have a pretty good idea of the number of lots they could fit on the south side, and
So
I don't
Drew-
want to create more, I don't want to create more density on the south side.
So Drew, do you have the plat that was emailed to us that shows the
Can't
dimensions?
discuss it.
You know, we can't,
This is a
we
zone
can't really
change.
bring that out, I guess, so. Taking the easement out, Councilman, that's what I think your concerns and worries are what you're gonna have anyway on that south end, right, with the motion. But using this line right down here, it helps keep that northern part, I think, out of any worries about the future of two lots. I know where you're going, but this kind of helps protect that down there. I think the ones on the south are gonna be kind of what they are, because the easement eats that out of it in that particular area, if that helps.
I think they're easements, right? They can still be part of the lot. So you can count that acreage as part of the lot. So it gets you over the 2 acres is my point.
Not if we go to the south. If we go to the first line I've drawn, you're not getting that. That's 1.5 acres, even including in the easement area.
I get where you're coming from.
That's
but-
going to be one lot.
But then does it cause a concern for the lots to the south to be able to get an extra lot there because of the 1/2 acre now? Just
I know, but it would be, the 1/2 acre would be in the easement itself, so no.
why can't you? You can have your front yard in the easement.
You sure can, but you still got
Can't
to
build
have
your
enough.
structure on it.
Did I hear you were going to dedicate, like trying to do what Doug's done and give that to the city or not? I didn't. No, you said something up here. I'm just asking what you said when you were up here about the easement area. I know you can. I wouldn't let you anyway. I wouldn't give you a building permit, but.
Have them come up.
Sorry. It sounds like council's already seen the proposed plan to some
Well,
degree.
we're not talking about that. Okay. So, but I'm just asking you what you said about in relationship to this easement earlier.
The preliminary plat that we prepared would, at this time, potentially be dedicating it back to the city for trail. But if we're being restricted to the point where they're having a hard time even developing this nuisancely shaped parcel, I think that we'd have to get creative on how to utilize, I think it's like 174 feet in width, something like that.
Well, I scrolled down to your, and it's 198, unless you're.
I'm talking easement.
Oh,
Yeah. Craig's that gap. UAMPS has 60, Trail has 50.
I thought you
There's-
told me one time it was 120 when we were working with Doug's piece.
It might be I said 132, yeah. So it's wide. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have it labeled. 132.62 feet. Yeah, on the, not perpendicular. Yeah. And that area was like 18,000 square feet. Plus additional, so it's actually even more than that. That's kind of unusable to private, like buildable area.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a stab at a motion, recognizing that this is a difficult piece to work with, recognizing that there is an existing use to the west, or to the east, there's an existing approval to the west that makes this parcel challenging. The conversation has seemed to go in circles. So for the time being, I'm going to recommend that the council deny this zone change request based on the extreme transition in lot size as it goes to the east, and we would entertain them to come back through the process with another application.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for denial.
So I would ask if the applicant's open to any of the suggestions we've made tonight.
Well, I think they've kind of heard what we've had there.
But we've-
You want to give them some more guidance.
Well, more in the fact of, like, we don't want to say what's presented before us looks like it's having difficulties with the council, right? We haven't made our motion, but in the past, we've gave the applicant an opportunity to say, yeah, we're good with this if we can move forward or not. And if they're not, and they want to start over and relook at it, I would just want to give them an opportunity to address it.
Jason Newton, Mr. Coates. What I would like some clarification on what you're asking for, because we're trying everything we can to not get high density in there. But the width of the road on that parcel is making the south side what it is, you know, and that doesn't seem to be the problem here. I'm a little bit confused why you're against the full acre lots in the back. That's what the Kents wanted, was acre lots.
I'm concerned because there's not access. There's not a road to it. We're having to do extremely long-aided access roads to get to those parcels. That's my concern, is the access to the public roads.
Like for emergency services, or because we were told by the city that you could do 2 lots on a private drive on a flag lot.
I'm not saying that's not what the city said. It's a concern I have.
Okay,
for public service, for the current future residents, just all the above. So those are my concerns on that northern lot.
I mean, and I know you don't want to go into this probably, but what would you do with that? I mean, we're not looking to build, 1 acre is huge, and what the ideal zoning would be. So I'm trying to figure out what you want so we could present it in a way.
So I want 1 lot down there based on the skinniness of the parcel. I think it's adequate to have 1 lot to the north. So that's just my opinion. Might not be anyone else's. Yeah. The half acre to the south, I don't have a concern with that. I understand it's a difficult position. I don't want to, and there was an option. There's a couple of things I see as we can continue with our motion, and a new presentation can be presented for the stuff to the south, and with a split zone where you have an RA half to the south, or a 1 acre to the north. Yeah. Or maybe it's 2 acres. I don't know.
Yeah, the 1 acre is essentially what we have right now, and we're willing to do that. We're perfectly willing to do 1 acre above the easement and half under.
Yeah, but it might need to be 2. I don't know. But those are the concerns that I have. And so, but I'm trying, you've gone through the process. We've given you a little direction tonight. And so I don't know. One suggestion I had was just to back off what's being zoned tonight too.
Say that again, Councilman.
So zone the south half and not the north half at this time, and you can reapply for the north house at a separate time. Or we can start over and look at the whole thing, or because we have a motion and a second on the table to deny it. I'm not trying to deny it tonight. I just want to give you an opportunity to amend this before we make our motion on this.
Okay.
No, but I think the applicant makes a good point. You know, he's saying this is what they've come up with. There are 2 flag lots with extremely long driveways, and public safety's weighed in. They don't have a problem with it. People that buy it would have full disclosure of what the lot would look like and what the driveways would be. It's difficult, but I think we're kind of pushing the applicant into a corner, because when you consider 2 acres in 1 house, that is an extremely large lot, especially if you have depending on your use for it. So, you know, I feel like that what they've done with this and the design that they've done under the circumstances and the barriers that are there, it makes sense to me. It's not ideal, but we're not going to get an ideal situation out of a piece that is shaped like this. You just can't do it. Geometry won't let you. But, you know, they're sharing their opinions. That's mine. I think you've worked hard to accommodate it. It's not perfect, but I don't know what else you could do.
And the challenge is, though, on that west side, you've got varying lot sizes. On the east side, you have 2 acre lots. So are we saying that a half acre is a transition, or are we saying a 1 acre is a transition?
or both.
Do you want to continue with the vote? The motion and a second?
Yeah.
Okay, it will be a roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, nay.
Ivy, nay.
Ward, aye. Can always make another motion.
Staley, nay.
Okay, that's denied, 3-2.
No, the
The motion is denied.
motion.
Okay, move on.
Well, we have to,
The motion failed, so we haven't actually completed any decision on the motion. Because it was a motion to deny.
Right.
so we
It's
have,
technically not over. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure yeah. Yeah, more exciting deliberation.
Mayor, would you entertain another motion?
I will entertain another motion.
Just again, to try to move this and see what we've got. Make a motion to approve a zone change request C-21-24 to change from open space to residential agriculture 1/2, located 2150 East Washington Dam Road. With, I've got a north and south, but it's pointing a different direction, so I'm not sure which, is it north? With the north end being the two large lots, 1 acre or slightly less, and then the smaller lots to the opposite end.
saying 1 acre or larger, right? For the zone. You're asking for a split zone?
I'm asking for the large end, well, knowing what the acreages are, I think that they could be accommodated to say an acre.
The concern I have with that is that if they use the easement acreage, they could still end up with 2 lots north of the trail, and I'm still hung up on that.
Is it a shared driveway? I mean, I know we're not supposed to look at the plat, but the applicant sent it to us. So in my mind, they emailed us the preliminary plat, asked us to look at it. I mean, my concern is if it's a shared driveway, maybe my concern goes away as much, but it is a zone change. So I'm looking for a split zone as well. So your motion, that's why I'm clarifying, Councilman Ivy.
Yes,
Are you
I'm
saying
asking.
a split zone of an R1
Yes.
to the north and an R one half to the south, but where do we determine that line on the south, north side of the easement or the south side of the current? And there's more than one easement. There's like 3 or 4 in there.
Yeah, I know. So, the one in the middle. You know, they're not really identifiable. It would be hard to call which one, but it would be north of the northernmost sewer line. I don't know. I don't know how to signify that or designate it. I don't have a boundary to go by.
Does that motion need to be restated with those additional items?
So maybe I'll help with the motion. So I'll make a motion. We approve the zoning with a split zone, R1 to the north and R1 half to the south, with the north half being a 400 by 90. I guess it's
389.
400 by 190 to the north being the R1 half. If the applicant is open to that.
Those numbers, dimensions of the space that would be zoned R1?
Yeah, so it's 101.75 acres.
motion?
Yeah.
Second, Mayor?
I have a motion and a second, as long as the applicant, are you amenable to that?
Before that is voted on, Drew, I have a question. Let's say that that northern road from Dennett's property
Oh, I included this.
continues east and dead ends into the Kent property. Is there, how much property, would there be a room to fit in 2 lots before that 400 by 190 section that the councilman mentioned? In that area north of, let's say that road extends to the east, how much property is there in there? Yeah, how much acreage approximately would that be?
That's tough because I'm trying to figure it's probably
Some
about
of that's on
one.
an easement, I think, that you're drawing.
It'd probably be about 180 by 190 by 190 square almost, because let me just see what we got here. That would be 36. You could only do 1.5 acre. Because that's 30, it's roughly
but on
36.
some of those, I've seen other areas where plats have included easements as part of their lot size, and there's a
Well,
50
even
foot
that-
easement that goes all the way through there that could be included as lot size.
Yeah, and I misdrew because you went up to 400 feet, so that red and blue line is actually 50 feet higher north, so it'd even be less acreage right there. Does that help you, Councilman? And then knowing to the south, they have 1.75, so at 1 acre minimum, even with the easements aren't even, they can't take advantage of or be hurt by going with the measurements we have. So you're going to end up with 1 lot to the north, and there'll only be room for possibly 1 lot south of that road being punched through, because it'll end up being 30 some odd thousand square feet. So everything would then have to be going northern.
So
southern.
why did the property, I guess they don't own that property, do they? I was asking why the property to the west didn't look to develop down there, but that's not.
They
that
don't
wasn't their
own that. Where
property.
my
They didn't own the
400 is
property.
written, that's a different property owner.
Oh, it's a
That's
separate
why.
property owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have no problem with the split zoning.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second on the table. We'll do a roll call vote.
So I don't think I understand the
All right,
motion.
we'll do the
So
motion again.
Let me reiterate what I was saying is that instead of doing the R1 half, we're going to do a split zone. The north piece is an R1, the south piece is an R1 half, and the north piece is a 400 by 190 parcel. Because we don't have a map in front of us, that's how I dictated it.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I got to the same place with the Dennett piece, which is I get really uncomfortable when the council starts trying to design these things from the rostrum here. That's why I supported denying it, have them work with staff and come back with something else. Because we're not sure about the numbers and anyways, but we've got a vote. We
Well,
do it.
I can withdraw my motion.
No, I would prefer to move it forward.
I do have a motion and a second. We'll start with a roll call vote.
Not to make
Bundy,
it
aye.
harder.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Or nay.
Staley, nay.
All right, that's approved 3-2. Okay, move on. Consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the project area plan for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project area. Rusty Hughes.
Council, we discussed this in our RDA meeting earlier. Is there anything that you'd like to review at this time?
I am comfortable with it.
Let's move on.
Yep.
I'm happy to make a motion. This is item 10B.
Yes.
I motion that the city council approve an ordinance adopting the project area plan for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area with the Redevelopment Agency that also approved this, a resolution allowing this to happen.
Mayor, I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you. Item 11, resolutions. Consideration to approve a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with the Washington City Redevelopment Agency for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area.
There, I'll go ahead again and motion that this city council approve a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Washington City Redevelopment Agency for the Siena Hills 1 Community Reinvestment Project Area.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward aye.
Staley, aye.
All right, that's approved. Let's move forward, huh? Congratulations, you guys. Item
Thank you.
and thank you, yeah. Award of bid, consideration to award the bid for Bueno Vista Boulevard, Green Springs Drive to Cactus Lane project. Andy Stevens.
Looks like Mike Shaw.
Mayor, I'll be
Mike Shaw. Boy, Andy, you sure have changed.
Yeah, I'm better looking.
That's true.
Mayor, this needs to just be pulled from the agenda. We got one bid on the project, so we did not open bids.
Okay.
We'll relook at it and rebid it and bring it back at a later time.
Okay, so noted. We will strike this one.
Mayor, I'll make a motion, we strike item 12 from the agenda. Do we need to do that, or?
Bundy, second.
Yeah. Roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you. Anything to report from your assigned committees?
Mayor, I do have one item from the Land Use Task Force. One thing that we discussed before, and I promised to bring back information as it works its way through, but the inclusionary zoning has reached kind of a difficult stage in the process of trying to get approval. There was a breakdown in conversation regarding the definitions, and usually I wouldn't bring something forward that's not something that's actionable, something that we can incorporate, but this inclusionary zoning it's proving to be a difficult topic to get everyone on the same page. But there's other items in this year's legislative session or next year's that has to do with this, and so they're trying to iron this out prior. And there's other items in that the league's working on that has to do with some of those issues that I brought up before. But I will keep council posted as that moves forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? City manager report.
Mayor, I have nothing to report this week. Thank you.
Okay, we will not have a need to go to a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made. Bundy.
Second, Coates.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ken.